All right, everyone, today we're going to be doing something a little bit different than I normally do on this channel. Today we're going to be talking about this. This is my Charter Arms Magnum Pug 357 Magnum. That's a revolver, unloaded, as you can see. 5 shots, nice grip on it. It's comfortable to hold in my hand. You know, the double action, you can see, reasonably smooth. Single action works pretty well on it. Also, you see the sights here. I gotta clean it a little bit. Anyway, so here's what we're gonna talk about. I've had this gun for about a year, and I really like it, all things considered. The trouble is, I'm having trouble with the sights. Now, the sights on this gun are there. It's got, you know, your front post here, and then it's got the groove in the notch and sort of the frame of the revolver in the back. And here's kind of your sight alignment. I'll try to line that up for the camera here. About like that. You got to have the front post in the middle of the rear trench, and then you got to have that kind of splitting your bullseye in half there, and that's how you aim. Now, the trouble with this gun is that this gun itself shoots really, really low. So when you aim it properly, you hit really low on the target. So even if you're only a few yards away, you might be aiming right at the bullseye, lined up like that, and you're going to be hitting inches off the center of the target. So I'm not the greatest shot in the world, but let me show you what I mean. So show you some targets here. So went to the range the other day, and I had some 38 Special and some 357 Magnum, and I put out some targets and I shot some groups with them to see. I did 10 shots for each group. We got 4 targets. I'll show you here, and a fifth one for later. I did 10 shots for each target. Every shot I took was in single action mode, so the hammer was pulled back on every shot. That shortens the trigger pull, so it's easier to be really accurate. And like I said, I'm not a great shot, so I need all the help I can get. Now, here's the first target we have. So this was shot with 38 Special at 5 yards, and here's the group that I had. And I was aiming right here the whole time, right at the center of that bullseye the whole time. Took 10 shots, and that's what it looked like. So that is about 3 inches or so. If you come down here, that's about 3 inches or so from the center of the target. And look over here. Here I did the same thing, 5 yards, but this time with 357 Magnum. I wanted to try some different ammo, different calibers, a lot more pressure on 357, as you may know, to see if I got different results. And the center of this group, maybe it's about here. This hit a bunch in the same time on the same spot here, but this is about 3 inches low from the center of the X as well at 5 yards. And then I pushed some targets out to 10 yards and took some more shots. This is 38 Special at 10 yards. And as you can see, this is a really, really bad grouping. But maybe the center is, I don't know, about here. I was kind of hit half the target down here, and you know, whatever. But this is about 4 inches low from the center of this X. And all these targets are identical. So you can see some that it's less accurate the further out you go, which is what you'd expect. And over here I've got some 357 Magnum that I shot at 10 yards at a similar target. Hit more of the paper this time on this one, that's for sure, than the other one, but 357 Magnum at 10 yards. And then this group, again, if you figure the center is eyeballing, I don't know, like right around here in this kind of location, and so you got kind of bullets all around there. This is about 4 inches off the center of the target as well. So what we have is a situation where the further out the target is, the lower that this gun actually hits. So what I think we've got going on here is a situation where you aim the gun like this, and it looks fine like this, and that's how it should be, just about like that there. But as you can see, the rear notch is here, but if you hold the gun sort of flat like this, the front post is a lot higher than this rear notch. So when you're lining up the sights, which is the top of the front post here in the middle of this notch, the gun isn't pointing straight at the target. It's pointing down. It's probably hard to see in the camera, but the gun itself is actually pointing down. If I was pointing this at a target and you were standing at my side looking at this gun, you would notice that there was a cant lower. So the gun is pointing down. It's literally pointing down as you're aiming it. Now, I did some research on that. I read some stuff online, and some stuff I read said that that's actually intentional, right? So revolvers are designed that way because what they count on is they count on the recoil from your shot literally bucking the muzzle. So the muzzle will, you'll pull the trigger and the recoil will cause the gun to come back like this. But when it does that, that in theory ought to bring the muzzle into alignment with your sight such that you'll actually hit what you're aiming at. So I guess based on what I read, they're counting on this happening. Now, that makes some sense to me, but at the same time, I mean, I'm aiming at these targets real carefully, and I'm hitting low on all of them. So to the extent, it definitely does buck when you shoot it for sure, but it's not enough to make those bullets hit anywhere close to the point of impact. I mean, I'm a few inches low at 5 yards, which is really, really, really strange. So went to the range, got to see that. So here's what I think is going on. So I drew this really sophisticated image of, you see, you got the gun here on the side, and the black line here is the trajectory of the bullet, and the orange dashed line is the sight line. Just, you know, it's not a perfectly accurate drawing, but it's a schematic, so you get it. And the blue line over here is the target you're shooting at. So this is a drawing of what I think is happening with this gun. It's that my line of sight is always above the bullet's path of travel, so they never actually intersect. Now, to have a handgun or any gun zeroed at any distance at all, in theory what you need is something that looks more like this, which is, again, forgive the schematic drawing, which is that your line of sight is actually crosses the path of travel of the bullet. And then it hits the target where you're aiming at whatever distance that is. And so what you need is something like this, I think, and what I have with the gun now is something like this. Now, I took this to a place, and the guy recommended, go ahead and just paint a stripe on, as I have here, paint a stripe on the bridge, or excuse me, on the ramp, on the ramp of your front sight. That way, when you aim, you line up, this is hard to see, I'm going to try to hold this real close to the camera here so you can see, but so you can line up the notch in the back with the stripe instead of the top of the post. So you're angling the gun up a little bit, so then you'll fire and it's more accurate. So I was like, all right, I'll give that a try. So I did some shooting, some experimenting with it, and with some 38 special, and that's when I got this last target here. I took this target, this is an 8-inch target. I pushed this out to 10 yards, and I used, if you can see the ramp here, might be hard to come into focus, but there's a little stripe of paint on that ramp right here. You can kind of see it's kind of blurry, but anyway, you can sort of see it there. But I aimed at it like that, aimed at the center of this target, and that's the group I shot. This is an 8-inch circle, and that was at 10 yards. I got some down to the right and some up to the left, and that seemed pretty good. However, when I was doing that and aiming at the target, I didn't like how when you're actually aiming at it, you're literally covering the thing you're shooting at with the front post. And so you can't really see it here, but if you can imagine this 8-inch target being back 10 yards and you're aiming at it, you're covering up a substantial portion of that bullseye with the front post. So I didn't like that very much. Also, not to mention, this is hard to see. This is just a bright orange paint marker here. It's kind of hard to see that line, especially when you take a bunch of shots. It kind of gets covered in carbon dust and everything like that coming out of the porting in the top of this barrel here. So anyway, so that stripe solution kind of works, I guess, but what I'm thinking about doing is I'm thinking of taking this to a gunsmith and having him just grind down that front post a little bit just to get better alignments. It's just easier and more clear to see instead of just kind of this stripe, which kind of gets covered in soot, and in other lighting conditions it could be harder to see unless you have like full direct light on it. So anyway, I got to think about that. That is something I'm going to do with this gun. I'll be thinking about that, and I will record that and show you what I came up with. Okay, this is part 2 of my video of my journey with my Charter Arms Magnum Pug 357 Magnum. The first part of this video, I described the fact that the front post seemed a little too high, and so the gun was shooting low, and as you point at the target, it's angled downwards, which seems kind of strange, and the gun shoots low. And so anyway, I investigated sort of some of my options to try to do a repair on it, and what I realized was that the gun was actually still under warranty with Charter Arms. And so what I did was I contacted them, and they had me give them some information on a piece of paper about the issues and had me send it to their facility in Connecticut. And they would take a look at what I wrote, take a look at the gun, and then they would see what they can do, and they would fix it up for me and send it back. So I spent about $40 on shipping at UPS to send it to Connecticut, and they were able to turn it around in about 26 days. So I'll go ahead and here's what they sent me back. I sent it in the case it came in. They gave me this form, which we'll read in a second with what they did, and then they've got the gun itself in here. It's this blue bag, and point of safe direction. It is unloaded, as you can see. Let's have a look at it. It looks like they cleaned it, so that front post looks a lot better. And yeah, the front post is definitely lower than it was. This looks like they machined it. You know, they did something to it to lower it, because it definitely does not look the same. But I still got, you know, your sight picture here. Try to sort of line that up for the camera. So that's sort of what you see. So they definitely modified it. Trigger pull feels fine. Single action. Feels good. Okay. So we'll get into this form here that they sent me. All right, so here's what do we have here. We've got, go ahead and read this. Okay, so initial issue, this is just a summary of what I wrote. Release screw tightens and moves into the gun after firing. Shoots low, thinks maybe sight blade is too tall. So I mentioned to them also that the release screw for the cylinder, it kind of walked back into the gun after repeated usage. So I told them about that issue, and so they supposedly looked at it, addressed it, and fixed it. So I'll show you that here. It's this screw right here, the kind of where that flathead is, right in the middle of the frame here. So when you push the cylinder release, it doesn't move right now just because of how it's designed, but that pushes that screw forward, and that pushes on this part. So it pushes that, and so then the cylinder can be taken in and out of battery. So that screw pushes and inside the gun when I push the release lever forward, so the cylinder can come out. This screw before was walking back into the gun, so you couldn't release the cylinder. You'd push this forward, but you couldn't move the cylinder at all, so it would get stuck. All right, so I'll read you what they wrote back to me. Customer reported that the release screw is loose and sinks into the frame when the cylinder rotates. Also stated that the point of impact is below the point of aim. Initial inspection revealed proper timing, range, rod, and gauge tolerances. The release screw was set too deeply and turned freely. The barrel is canted to the shooter's left. See, I didn't even know that. So they picked that up apparently. So I didn't know that. Anyway, the front sight height is approximately 0.015 inches too tall. So almost 2/100ths of an inch too tall. The release screw was crimped and set to the proper depth, approximately flush with the frame. The barrel was removed and inspected. It was then remounted and aligned with the sight alignment tool. The front sight blade was then cut to the correct height. Test fired double action and single action, targeted at 25 feet with 5 rounds of Cellier and Beloit 148 grain lead wad cutter. The unit shoots to point of aim within tolerances for barrel length and caliber. Target enclosed. No further additional faults noted. All functions nominal. Mark. So yeah, they actually sent me, I haven't opened this yet, but they sent me the actual target they used at the test range. All right, after pausing to get some scissors, I got the package cut open, the target they sent. Okay, let's unfold this thing. All right. It says 25-foot fixed distance range. 5 rounds, Cellier and Beloit 148 grain lead wad cutter, center hold, single action and double action. So I've got just one target here, but here's the group they shot. 25 feet, so it's a little more than 8 yards. Looks good to me. Cool. I'm gonna take this to the range soon and test that out for myself, and we will see what kind of targets I can shoot. and I will get back to you guys. See you then. Okay, so went to the range and did some shooting, and here's what we got. So I did the same kind of drill at first as I did last time, where I had these targets here set up at 5 yards and 10 yards, and I took some shots at each one with a 38 Special and 357 Magnum. And here's what I got. And I have the other targets underneath here so you can sort of maybe see the difference a little bit. These new groupings are only 5 shots, and so we'll see what we can surmise from that. Excuse me, so we'll see what we can gather from that. So this is the first one. This is 38 Special at 5 yards, and that for me is a pretty good group actually. So so that's what it looks like. And here was it before the repairs on the gun were done. So you can see here on the old one, the group was centered, but it was low. This one, maybe it's a little off center, but it's definitely higher. So that's a really good sign. 357 Magnum, similar story. It's maybe a little off to the left here. This is at 5 yards. So it's centered. I got one in there and on the black and everything. And but here's the older group. So centered but low. And then this was higher but maybe a little off center. But that could just be me. Charter Arms again said that the barrel was canted to the left, and so they fixed that. And I didn't even know that was a problem. Now over here is 10-yard shots, 357 Magnum right here. So we're again a little off to the left, but still maybe higher than this group. So this is the old group right here, and here's the new one. So kind of clustering on the 8 in the old group. Maybe we're a little bit more like the 9 up here. So that seems like it's an improvement. It's getting better, definitely for sure. So here's a 38 Special group at 10 yards, which one here, this is not a good group for me. It's hard to even see where it's centered at all. But here is the old one just for comparison. So that was all over the place too. So looks like the groups are trending a little bit higher for sure, and maybe shooting to the left is just me. So anyway, but I did some more shooting, and that same day at the range, this is an 8-inch target. I shot this at 8 yards. I shot 10 shots at it of 38 Special, and so I got 8 on the paper, 1 just off, and I guess just 1 I missed entirely. So 9 on the page, 8 inside the 4-inch circle. That's really good for me. So I'm pretty happy with that. Most of them are kind of low, so maybe it's just how I shoot, and I just need more practice. But had 1 up here. But then a few days later, I went back to the range, same gun, and just shot some 38 Special at a target at some different distances here. And here's what I got. So this is 30 rounds in this target. And there's a flyer down here, but this all looks really centered. I took 10 shots each at 5, 7, and 10 yards. I didn't mark them, but as you can see here, this is when I look at this, I see a really centered group. I was aiming right for the X, hit it a couple times, got a lot inside of this 10 ring, and all of them inside the 9 ring except this one. So I'm going to take that and say that Charter Arms fixed my gun. They did it under warranty, so I didn't have to pay any money to Charter Arms. I just had to pay to ship the gun to them. And they did a really good job taking care of me. And this is the end result, and I'm really happy with this. And so I want to say thanks to Charter Arms. They really stepped up with their customer service for me, and they made sure I got a serviceable piece in my hands. So so that's kind of the end of the story. And so if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.